Welcome to day 3.
Are we just going to keep doing this? So it's like day 65.
Yes.
Like, I don't think it's as punchy as you think it is.
You got a better idea?
Yeah. This.
Could you please give us your name?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Could you please?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Could you please give us your name?
Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell.
Well, speaking of punchy, a word that I think we've used every episode since we... it feels like we've been doing this for longer than 3 days, but for the past 3 days, we are feeling once again even punchier.
Yeah, I'm now sick.
Yeah, Liz is sick, and boy,
Sick of looking at you.
Yeah, and she has been staring at me all day. It's been, I feel like, very disrespectful.
Oh.
And just frankly distracting. But we are fresh out the box. And that's what I'm calling the courthouse now. We call it in law school the box. And actually, let's introduce ourselves first. My name is, that's right, the Barrister Brace.
I'm simply Liz. We are, as always, joined by producer Young Chomsky. You are listening to, of course, TrueAnon, and this is our coverage of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Hello, welcome, everyone.
Hello. And so most of the time since we last left you, Christ, that was just last night, well, we sort of left off with Visosky there, and then we mentioned that there was a victim that began testifying, minor victim number 1, that we get to her more today as her testimony rolls over.
Yes.
And it rolled almost into the end of the day today.
Yeah, it did. We should say that we mentioned this last episode, but in case you're just tuning in or you were tuning out last episode, that she is wishing to not be identified. So she's going under a pseudonym, Jane, which I guess is short for Jane Doe.
Kind of, but also, no, I don't think so, because I feel like that'd be uniform for all the ones going through pseudonyms.
I know, it's odd, because they're always like, the other ones have pseudonyms, but it's like Kate.
I know.
Like, that's not usually a pseudonym.
Yeah, Kate and Carol. Or Carolyn.
Carolyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, minor victim 1, a.k.a. Jane. I think we'll just call her Jane from here on out.
Yeah.
Although I guarantee I'll forget that I said that in 2 seconds and just refer to
don't
this.
use her real name.
Yeah, I won't. She seems to me, both in her placement in sort of the list of victims, which I'm not saying that corresponds to whose case is strongest, but both being minor victim 1 there, she's also the earliest, but also having been the example that the prosecutors opened their opening statement with. So they sort of counterpose a lot of hay was made around Bobby's.
Sure, we talked about it
exactly
at length.
Opening her statement with the sort of talk about Eve and all of that. The prosecutors open theirs talking about Jane.
Yeah, they use her story as kind of a framing device. So they say, imagine that you're a 14-year-old girl at a camp, a summer camp, and you're approached by, not young, but say mid-young, younger old.
Yeah, yes.
Middle-aged man and woman. And that's kind of where Jane's story starts. She first met Epstein and she alleges Ghislaine, and this is a point of contention that we'll get to.
Oh, yeah.
At Interlochen summer camp in Michigan. We've actually discussed this case on the show before. Yeah,
I was actually trying to go back and look today because I mentioned that last night. We definitely have.
Yes,
because
very early on.
Very early on, because I knew a lot of the details around this, and this was actually one of the less discussed in general cases for some reasons that become apparent as the testimony goes on, or as the testimony went on today. But yeah, no, it's also one of the earliest cases that has been reported against Jeffrey Epstein, and one of the only ones that was sort of started in Florida.
Right.
That got a lot of media attention in the early 2000s.
Right. She wasn't one of the students recruited out of one of the Palm Beach high schools.
No, you're right. Yeah, she fit sort of a different mold in some ways, although there are some similarities too. So she took the stand last night, last afternoon. I don't know. The days and nights are sort of
It
flowing
gets dark
together for
early
me.
here.
Yeah, and I didn't,
Also, you can't really, not a lot of sunlight in these rooms.
no, and I didn't really sleep last night, so it's all kind of one thing. And the prosecution put her up there, and they started right at the beginning there, right where they started with the opening statement is, where'd you meet Jeffrey Epstein? And Ghislaine Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in 1994, like we just said, at Interlochen Summer Camp. And so what she said is that, and which makes sense to me, is that Ghislaine Maxwell approached her and she was having ice cream with some friends. And then Jeffrey Epstein came up and they, sort of talked to her for a while. He explained he was a benefactor of the camp, found out she lived in Palm Beach, and then it sort of.
Yeah, she says that Jeffrey said, "Oh, I think I know your mother."
Yes.
And then asks for her mother's phone number.
Mm-hmm.
And that later on, when she gets back in Florida, is when Epstein first contacted her family to come over and have tea.
Yes, and Jane says that her father had recently died, around this time, and that her family was, and becomes another big point of contention with the defense, that her family was in a pretty tough situation. They were living in a pool house. She used the word homeless at one point,
Mm-hmm.
which gets brought up today, and basically paints the picture, which is the impression that I had of this particular case, and frankly, most cases of girls that he dealt with in Florida, of a pretty tough living situation, and a man, Jeffrey Epstein, of incredible means who took advantage of those means to get this girl to do what he wanted.
Yeah.
The prosecution's questioning of Jane goes on to sort of talk about how her relationship with Epstein developed, because after that sort of tea that she had with Epstein and her mother, she starts going over there alone. And then she says once a week, once every 2 weeks for years, she'd go over there and she would have sexual contact with Jeffrey.
Yeah, she says that it started that she would start to get picked up by Jeffrey's driver once every 2 weeks, and that went on from when she was 14, 15, 16.
Yes.
The relationship sort of like it hinges on basically Jeffrey saying, you're very talented. I want to help you out. I'm going to help sponsor you. I'm going to pay for this. I'm going to pay for that. Do you need singing lessons? Do you need acting lessons? Whatever, what have you. And kind of, the kind of grooming of that kind of stemming from that sort of relationship. Yeah.
And especially, obviously, pertaining to this case here, Ghislaine's role in that.
Yeah, so the Jane starts, she says that she didn't fully understand or couldn't get a read on Ghislaine and Jeffrey's relationship.
Yes.
When they first met. She's like, I don't know if they're married, maybe they're like best friends, or maybe she actually works for him. This is like a constant theme throughout this entire case.
Frankly, it was a mix of all three.
Yeah, it's complicated. And she says that Ghislaine, who was always present, or always like a present figure, if not physically present. Again, this becomes a point of contention.
Yes.
But that she describes Ghislaine as odd and quirky, which I thought was very fun.
While you were saying that, I was looking at my notes that say odd ... quirky.
Yeah. She says she was kind of like trying to be this like weird older sister to her.
Did you get the next quote down from that?
I did, yeah. At one point, she's saying, okay, Ghislaine is likes to be like this older sister, and she would, kind of try to talk to me like, oh, we go to the mall, oh, we go to the movies, oh, we're going to talk about boys and all of this stuff. And she said, she would ask her about, do you have any boyfriends? And have conversations like that. And then apparently Ghislaine decided to, give her some advice, which I don't know if this is advice. And she says, the thing to know about boyfriends is that once you fuck them, you could always fuck them again because they are grandfathered in.
You and I think made some hard eye contact with that, because I was, what? Who? what are they? What rule are they grandfathered in under? Is it not cheating, or like you just always have a freebie?
I think
with
she
them?
means
like
numbers wise. I think she means it doesn't count as a number
as a
on the
notch?
list.
Well, yeah, of course. But once you fuck anyone, they don't count it again as a number.
Well, it doesn't. Men don't have these sorts of like lists in the same way that women have them held against them.
Yeah,
So I think that's kind of what she meant.
gotcha. I was thinking that it's like you can always
Like go back.
Yeah,
But
like
that's not
there's
really
always
what-
a little more rocky road in the jar.
Ew.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to think of who Ghislaine's talking about right there.
Well, she also talks about how Ghislaine and Jeffrey took her to Victoria's Secret to buy underwear, which is a pretty, like, particularly kind of like, ooh, like everyone in the room kind of like crunched up a little bit when they heard that.
She mentions that it was just like regular, like a white, like, like underwear you'd buy like a teenager or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was still like Victoria's Secret for like, you can just go to, yeah. I thought that I was with you on that. Of course, Epstein's, relationship with Leslie Wexner, Victoria's Secret too. I don't know.
Yeah, she mentioned that they were constantly bragging about all of the big people they were friends with. And this is where, you get some names thrown out, a little crowd service. You hear Trump, you hear Clinton, Mike Wallace comes up, who's I knew the second this name like entered the room that Brace had no idea who this person is.
I know who Mike Wallace is.
Oh, you looked at me and you went, "What? Mike Wallace?"
No, I was just like, Mike, I've never heard Mike Wallace connected to Epstein
yeah.
before.
You
But
think he's too old?
Well,
I feel like
it's-
even when he was a young man, he was an old man.
there is a picture of Wallace and Robert Maxwell and Trump and a few other people kind of gathered around. Mike Wallace is a seriously fucked guy,
Yeah.
too. And
Is
so,
he really?
I mean, I watched a bunch of
He's
his
got a
Nation
fucked
of
up looking
Islam
face.
documentary. And
His
so
which?
that was my first. He made one like in like the 50s. That was my first introduction.
Ugh.
Not in the 1950s.
Is he still alive?
No, he is very dead.
Well, I would hope so, but I don't know.
I assume because they talk about going to his 80th birthday party in the 90s. So he's
Oh,
got-
yeah.
unless
It
I don't know,
was
unless
his 80th,
he's
wasn't
doing
it?
because he's got the really good adrenochroma. He's definitely dead.
I mean, people be living long.
But he was mentioned a couple of times today. Well, I think that's
Yeah.
because there's a lot of foreshadowing that went on in the prosecutors, or not. Yeah, there was a lot of foreshadowing, but Mike Wallace came up again today.
Yeah. The other interesting thing that the prosecution asked her, and I was like, oh, where are they going with this? I hope we might get some pictures later on in the trial.
Yeah,
Is Pomerantz, the AUSA, asked, what was the decor like in the Palm Beach mansion?
yes.
What was the artwork like? And I was like, oh, it's a gate. And just kidding. No, but she was basically like asking her to say like, what did it make you feel uncomfortable? Like what was
Yes.
it about? And she was like, and Jane said, I found the artwork very creepy.
Yes.
She said weird animals.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of like naked orgy scenes on the artwork, topless women. This is all stuff that you and I have talked about.
And this
noted.
she's talking about New York and Palm Beach here,
So first she mentions Palm Beach, and then when they talk about the New York property, she says the same thing. And she says too about the New York property, she says it was really dark. There was
Yeah.
like a dark, heavy energy, like it was like a deep, dark place.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there were some. So Ghislaine's team, I think we might have talked about this in an earlier episode, or I might have just read this and we didn't talk about it. But Ghislaine's team has been fighting pretty hard to get any evidence collected from that initial police raid on Epstein's Palm Beach house dismissed because they have a lot of those kind of images. And that's also, I believe, where the Twin Torpedoes sex toy is mentioned as well, or that's where that comes from. That was collected from as well. Because another thing too is that, as we've talked about, Epstein's massage room in his Palm Beach house, multiple testimony from multiple employees and victims saying that there was basically an armoire full of sex toys there, and that sex toys do play a role in the abuse that was mentioned.
Yes.
She describes, so again, this case is, and I'm not to sound like the fucking judge or whatever, like this case is about Ghislaine, not about Epstein.
Yes.
And so Ghislaine's team is sort of ready to sometimes throw Epstein out there to the wolves, and then, but into service Ghislaine not being a part of that. And so a lot of this specific, I mean, all of these specific charges relate to Ghislaine's role in facilitating Epstein's sexual abuse.
Right.
And that was a big part of what was mentioned yesterday during Jane's testimony, is that, well, where was Ghislaine when this was all happening? And she said that I think the second time she went over to the house, like after the tea party thing, either the second time or very early on, Ghislaine was out by the pool with a bunch of other women, all either topless or nude.
Yes.
And that Ghislaine, like, she really painted actually a very convincing picture of Ghislaine, and this word came up a lot too. And in most instances, I would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna roll my head at any use of eyes at use of the word," but in this, it made a lot of sense. Ghislaine normalized sex around this 14-year-old girl,
Right.
and so she described how Epstein would touch her, which don't really need to get into here, but obviously, people are familiar with his crimes. And that Ghislaine would like be there and basically act normal, right? And I think that's pretty important, because to be a young girl with a woman in the room, like an older woman, older sister type of person, who's like acting like what's happening to you is like no big deal. That literally, I mean, that would normalize it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was at this point in the testimony that, like, whatever, we make a lot of jokes in this show and we make light of a lot of things, but we also know when to not make light of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And this is one of those times. Like, this was really difficult to watch and listen to, and it's not meant to be easy to listen to. And what this woman, Jane, what was she saying? And, she's like a grown woman at this point. She was 14 years old in 1994. She's a grown woman now. And she was crying. It was very difficult for her, and she was still, you could tell, like, I mean, it felt like she was still very deeply embarrassed, and this is a word that she used.
Often, yeah.
Yeah, to kind of, admit or even just, like, be honest about, what happened to her, and I think that is, like, a very understandable and, like, easy to relate to reaction, but it was very difficult to watch. And I do want to say, like, what she said was that she had been spending time at Epstein's house. Ghislaine was there as well at the house, and the first time that the sexual contact started, that he and her were talking about her dreams and like what she wanted to achieve. She wanted to be a singer. She's 14 years old. She's had dreams of being an actress, of being on Broadway, of being a singer, of being famous, of being, a famous actress. And, he basically said to her, I know everyone. You just have to be ready for it. You just have to be ready for it. I can show you everything. And then he grabbed her. This is, again, her testimony, said, follow me, took her to a pool house, sat her on the couch, and then pulled his pants down and masturbated onto her.
Yeah.
This is when she's 14 years old. And she said she was frozen. She didn't know what to do. Then he left. And at that point, it just kind of kept happening. That opened the door, and then it kept happening. And then at a certain point, Ghislaine, like you say, was more and more present in these encounters, normalizing it, making it feel like what she was experiencing with Jeffrey was nothing weird, nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed about, nothing untoward or nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Look, here's a woman who was taking you to the movies, who was taking you to the mall. She was being your girlfriend, being your sister, asking you about boyfriends, talking to you about whatever. She doesn't think anything's weird with it. In fact, she thinks it's fine. In fact, here, let me help you out.
Yeah.
Let me help you get undressed. Let me show you what he likes.
Yeah. That was another thing too. Is that Jane talked about how Ghislaine would sort of literally model this for her and like show her what Jeffrey liked, and she just described it in detail. And this was, like you're saying, like this went on for a little while, and it was difficult to watch. I mean, not obviously what she's saying is horrific, but she was so uncomfortable, and she was crying, yes, but like you could tell that like she really did feel, I don't think I'm at a place saying this, but she felt ashamed talking about it, like really deeply ashamed, which really tracks a lot of other things that she said yesterday and today as well. She described Jeffrey basically putting her in group sex situations with, or what she called orgies, in situations with just Jeffrey and Maxwell, just Jeffrey. And that's the thing is Ghislaine wasn't there every time, but Ghislaine was part of the machinery that kept this going. And Ghislaine was also present. I mean, she explicitly said that Ghislaine did touch her, not in her genitals or anything, but on her breasts. And another thing that she mentioned too is that Ghislaine also assisted with travel arrangements.
Yes.
And that is a pretty important point here because, she traveled with Epstein.
Yeah, I mean, she went on a bunch of trips with Epstein to New York, to New Mexico, quite often, it seems.
Yeah.
And that becomes quite a big part of this story as well, because you're dealing with obviously moving someone from one state to another, which is, a whole nother set of charges. So, that becomes a key part of the story as well.
Yeah, and that was mentioned when Visosky was on the stand, I guess maybe earlier yesterday, or maybe I guess it would be earlier yesterday, when he was sort of acting like he didn't know which person, because as we mentioned in yesterday's episode, Epstein also had an assistant with the same name as this girl. And on the flight log, sometimes it would just be this first name. And so the pilot was like, well, I thought it was her, but I actually didn't see her back there. So it could be this assistant too. I obviously we both voiced skepticism at that yesterday, but I was like, what the fuck? This is ridiculous. And I quadruple checked today. There's no way it could be the same person, especially not with the years that they listed, which was 96, 97, 98.
I think one last thing before we move on to the cross-examination was that her relationship with her mother was brought up. And it's pretty upsetting to hear about. She said that her mother basically, that she grew up in a house where you mentioned that her father had recently passed away, and that's a part of the story. She said that she was never kind of allowed to grieve her father's death properly, and that she lived in kind of a house and a culture that was very much like, don't talk about anything, don't let anyone know that you're going through anything. We can talk about stuff inside the house, or you can say something, but you never let anyone outside the house know anything.
Yeah.
And so at one point during the kind of years of abuse that she was enduring, but from Epstein and Ghislaine, she had mentioned that something was going on to a guidance counselor that she had kind of developed a relationship with at her school. And the guidance counselor reached out to her mother to tell her, like, something bad is going on here, and like you need to step in or check in with your daughter, or what have you. And from what Jane says, the mother basically shut the guidance counselor down and got upset with Jane and said, like, shut your mouth, don't tell anyone about this. They're very generous. These people are changing our lives. Basically sit down and take it. Because at this point, Epstein was not just giving money to Jane, but also giving money to Jane's mother, paying for summer camps, paying for education, paying for courses, classes, specialized tutoring, whatever, voice lessons. That dynamic is really difficult to hear.
Yeah.
Like really, really difficult to hear. I don't know. And she kind of ended her testimony basically answering the question, like, why did it take you so long to come out and talk about this? Why didn't you say anything to anyone about the sexual abuse? And she says that, like we said, she said she felt ashamed, she felt disgusted. she was confused. But she says, how do you describe any of this to any of your friends or your peers when you feel so much shame and disgust with yourself?
Yeah.
And just hearing this grown woman say this, I mean, it's really, I know it sounds cheesy, like, to say this, but, like, hearing this woman testify this stuff in court is really powerful.
Yeah.
It really is. We've been following this case for a long time, and seeing these girls, like, standing up, sitting there and saying this into record is, I don't know, it's something to see. I feel very, I don't take it lightly that we're sitting there listening to this.
No, absolutely not. One thing about Jane too is that because this definitely comes up with the defense, is that she has a career and is in fact, like, I'm not going to say a public figure. She's not a public. I don't know actually how to describe it, because this isn't really my world, the world that she's in. But she's well known. Like, she is I guess she's famous. She's an actress.
Yes.
And she is really adamant about, like, she didn't want to be basically identified as one of Epstein's victims because that would affect, like, she just didn't want that in her life, which makes sense because that would be, more than almost anyone else involved in this case, tabloid fodder like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, and it becomes difficult for casting.
Yeah, I'm sure, exactly.
Yeah, that's it.
Also, he had no shortage of friends in Hollywood either.
Well,
especially even after
there's
his
that too.
Conviction as well. But right out the gate, Laura Menninger on the defense, she came up and she just, the first question she asked, I don't even think she said, like, good hello, or what, anything, thank you for being here. She just said, "You waited 20 years to report to law enforcement." And that really set the tone for, I mean, today's, I feel like she approached it a little differently, but last night she was really
well.
going
That's what's interesting. We were talking to Julie K. Brown about this today. Not at Cafe Lorenzo.
No.
Although we had grabbed coffees at Cafe Lorenzo.
And we were standing right above Cafe Lorenzo.
Yes. But we were talking about that, and we were saying that how do you say her name?
Menninger, yeah.
Will Menaker?
No, it was not Will. No.
It's I keep
He's not getting
hearing
called
Menaker.
up for a few more days.
Yeah. No, Menninger, one of the defense attorneys, that she, like you said last night, she was so, like, boom, attacking. She is like, okay, also description time. Ice blonde. Like cartoon. Okay, so Bobby is cartoon defense attorney of a different kind, where she is the, like, bombastic. She kind of looks like a Far Side comic. You know what I'm talking about?
Definitely looks like a Far Side. That's a really apt description.
But Menninger is like a typical defense attorney, but from, like, The Good Wife or Law and Order.
You're gonna have to get, okay, that's a little.
Or like Ally McBeal, but not a comedy episode one.
1 out of 3 ain't bad.
So, like, ice blonde, little skirt suit, like, very thin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she would never call herself a girl boss because she's too old. She's, like, became professional before that was a thing.
Yeah.
But she was, like, probably top of her class at Stanford Law or whatever.
When her first search on Magellan search engine was power suit.
Yes. No, she's like, she is a boss bitch. But so she got up there and she was like, why did it take you so long? Like you said, ba-da-da, like trying to poke holes. But it was, like, really aggressive in a way that just was like, lady, you're laying it on too thick. Yeah. And clearly someone told her that, because this morning, man, she was so much softer. It was almost surprising.
Well, I feel like she was kind of she was also, I think part of the softer tone is that she wanted us to think that, I don't know, it felt it was condescending, but what I'm searching for is to describe, like, she was basically kind of being like, well, you seem to have forgotten this, or did your memory change? That sort of tone. I actually wrote in my notes yesterday, she is no Bobby. But I do think it was actually, I think this was probably on purpose. So, I mean, she went into her last night, but the testimony only lasted for, I think, less than an hour before court adjourned. And which, by the way, no gavel.
Yeah.
Do they only do that? Like, we
No,
haven't-
they do it.
I don't think I've seen one smack of a gavel. From
The thing is, they break for lunch and they do like afternoon breaks, and I don't think they gavel then.
no, but
Maybe
they don't
they
even
do?
gavel. I guess they haven't had to call a court to order,
Mm,
but they
okay.
will. But this morning when we got there, because we sit in the we're sitting there for a while before the trial actually starts. And defense is actually, we get there and we can hear her arguing, the defense sort of not arguing, but having this kind of back and forth, the judge and the prosecution over the definition of homelessness.
Oh, yeah.
And that becomes basically a vital part of, not a vital, but a important piece of the tapestry they were trying to weave today.
Yeah, so basically the defense, the classic defense strategy is now, okay, you gave this testimony, every single thing that you just testified to, I'm going to like bit by bit try to see what I can break apart, break open, say, oh, that's a lie. Oh, you changed your story. Oh, is that really what you know what I mean? And for her, Jane had described herself as homeless after the death of her father and her family's ensuing bankruptcy. She said they lost their home and that she was homeless. So they were arguing over whether or not the fact that she lived in a pool house constituted her being homeless, which, fair enough. But what they were trying to do was basically then use it as a way to say the witness should be impeached.
Yes. So they were essentially trying to, I mean, here's the thing. All Ghislaine's team needs to do is to make it so that it's not beyond a reasonable doubt that Ghislaine's guilty, right? That there is reasonable doubt. I don't know why I just said that in that insanely roundabout way.
Okay, yes.
But that they need to be like, well, maybe she is innocent. That's all they need to convince the juries to say.
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily, I don't know. I felt different things about this testimony through different parts of today. But I kind of hearken back to what the fuck am I saying? You know what? No, I'm hearkening back to the defense's opening statement where they kind of lay out their roadmap, which is they're going to accuse these girls of essentially testifying because of memory, as in memory issues, manipulation, although that was pretty much absent. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And money, which is really tied in with manipulation there.
Yeah.
And so they go hard on her memory because we can't. So all of the evidence here, like we said yesterday, is under seal, meaning that only the jury, the defense and prosecution, witness, and the judge get to see it.
Yes, because it has identifying information.
Yeah,
and she wishes to remain anonymous. And so things like anything that refers to her address growing up or jobs that she's had in the past or things that could be identifying information. One of the biggest and most annoying fights that the lawyers are having is over what constitutes identifying information, which fair enough, because there's only so many questions you can ask someone about, do you remember this? Do you remember that? That doesn't involve any kind of information that could possibly be identifying.
Yes. And today was obviously with day 3 of the trial, much smaller contingent of journalists and actually attending today. But we did have Bradley Edwards there, who's Virginia Jeffrey's lawyer and lawyer for a bunch of the girls in Florida. Him and I can't remember the woman's name, but Brittany, I think the woman he wrote the book with, who's like his legal assistant, and then a couple other people. And Marlon, a friend of the pod and former guest, Marlon Ettinger, was sitting by them, which was a sort of funny sight because they were all in suits and power suits, and he was wearing a flannel. But I guess Bradley Edwards was getting like pissed off during the defense questioning of Jane. And I gotta say, like they were being, like we said, not as mean as last night, but they were being tough with her.
Yeah, so they basically brought up 3 instances of Jane talking to the government. They always refer to it as the government, which I really liked, but then I realized you can call the FBI and the U.S. Attorney. I mean, it's all the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think in total there were 5 interviews, but there was 3 main ones that they referenced.
Yeah, December 2019, February 2020, and November 2021. Although they also refer to interviews as recent as 2 months ago.
Yeah, and in September, or I don't know, did you say whenever you said in September and December 2019 too?
So she says in her interview with the government in December 2019, this is what the defense attorneys are reading back to her, kind of. It's a little more complicated than that, but they're basically imparting this is the information that the government has from the interview that you gave in December 2019 to Jane, that she was not sure if Maxwell ever touched her during these encounters. She was not sure if Maxwell ever kissed her, that Maxwell never used vibrators or sex toys on her, that she never gave her a talk about how to massage Epstein, that Ghislaine never saw her give Epstein oral sex or hand jobs or like masturbate, and that she never saw her have sex with Epstein, and that she has no memory of Ghislaine being present when she claimed Epstein engaged in sexual contact with her. Now this, like, when hearing this, we were both kind of like, whoa.
Yeah, because yeah, exactly, because they ended on, and I was sort of so like taken aback by this, although I later reconsidered that, but it says you weren't sure that you plus Jeff plus Ghislaine were alone in the room together, which meaning massage room, and I think the subtext there.
And that was from a separate interview.
Yeah.
A later interview in 2020.
Exactly. And she says, I don't recall. She said, I don't recall to a lot of this stuff, which is a very fair response.
Well, yeah, that's the legal,
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you got to say.
Yes. But, these were interviews she took with the FBI, and she mentions a few things that she's like, I know that's wrong. And she says that they're either typos, and I guess that these interviews aren't recorded, which I'm a little surprised by.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. She said the interviews were not recorded, that they were just based on notes that FBI agents had taken.
Yeah.
And so she said that there were lots of inconsistencies. Now, the defense made light of her consistent responses to these.
Yeah.
Where the first couple times she was like, oh, that's a typo. That must be I don't know what that is. That's a typo. And she was being a little bit, I think she's being a little flippant in her response at first.
Yeah.
I mean, understandably, she's under cross-examination. And as she went on, then the defense would say, oh, is it another typo? Kind of like digging at her a little bit.
And then she'd
kind
be
of like,
yes, it was.
Well, she didn't say that, but yeah. And then later on, it was interesting because I remember I was watching that and I was like, damn, they kind of got her on that. Like, it sounds ridiculous that there would be typos and blah, blah, blah. But then it was so funny. It seems like there actually was a typo.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think there really were typos.
Well, these are like, that would...
Some of these are,
That's literally like changing notes, maybe.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about the, like, her memories of some of this stuff. But, yeah, no, go on about the, I know what you're about to say.
Yeah, so at one point, the defense accuses her of retaining a $250,000 a month personal injury lawyer for when she first filed her suit against Ghislaine. And she kind of like looked shocked and she was like, no, that's wrong. And the defense says, well, I have it right here in the notes. And she reads back from these FBI notes, $250,000. And she's like, no, that's wrong. One, because I don't have $250,000 to spend a month on a lawyer. And two, because it was $25,000.
Yeah. Which
so
is that
literally was a typo.
Yeah, it was
1-0 off.
I gotta say, they went through, I mean, so they basically, I could tell where this was going from really before the court actually like started today, when they're talking about the homelessness thing, is that they were trying to make it seem that like, oh, well, you weren't actually so poor. You lived in a gated community near a country club. And it went on from there. They essentially just like, I mean, what they're doing is they're trying to make her seem like she is, has a corrupted memory, I don't think they're trying to be like, I mean, that's a little too extreme and I think wouldn't necessarily play with juries. They're not trying to say like, you're fucking lying, but like, you maybe constructed this story for yourself that isn't exactly like coherent or like doesn't really have to do with reality.
Or you change your story so many times because
Exactly.
you're not remembering things. One time you remembered it this way, then you remembered it that way. I think they kind of vacillate between, maybe you're remembering it wrong because so much time has passed and you've kind of made things up, or also now that Epstein's dead, you need a placeholder for Epstein, who has now become Ghislaine.
Yeah, exactly. That was a big part of it too. Is that like, well, it looks like you mentioned Epstein a bunch, but it's like, well, Ghislaine's not on trial for what Epstein did. Ghislaine's on trial for facilitating what Epstein did and partaking in it too. Well, only somewhat partaking in it, but like she's really like the charges are about like trafficking a minor. You know what I mean? And like transporting a minor and this sort of stuff. And so a lot of that doesn't even really like necessarily, I don't know. Like the thing is too about memory, and this is why there's going to be, I'm calling it now, long fight between both trying to get different experts disqualified, but also between the experts themselves about memory. The thing about memory is, I mean, everybody listening to this probably can think of some time in their own life when something like, not like this has happened, but maybe when you've kind of like, you tell a story a couple different times, or you don't feel like, you're telling it to some people, because she was really reluctant. Like again, I want to repeat, really reluctant to get involved in any of this.
Yeah.
And, for very, numerous reasons, all very good. And so you can tell, like, she was probably pretty hesitant talking to the FBI during some of this. And frankly, too, it's like, this happened a long time ago. This happened in the early 1990s, like she's no doubt, these were pretty traumatic things that have happened to her. And she's no doubt tried to like, I mean, she literally has. She has tried to distance herself from these things, but she has spent a while thinking about these. Or the defense said that she was coming up with memories, which I think that language was chosen very much on purpose. But it's memory can be this sort of fluid thing like that. And I have no doubt that she is telling the truth about this. I mean, she is accusing Ghislaine not only of nothing that is not totally congruent with what we have heard from numerous people.
Absolutely.
Ghislaine did, but is also like, I mean, she wanted to exaggerate about Ghislaine's behavior and make her seem like she did, way more heinous things than she did. She could, and she's definitely not doing that.
Yeah, totally.
She is, the prosecutor asked like sort of the descending order of what kind of sexual encounters you had with Epstein. Number 1 was Epstein alone. Number 2 was Epstein plus other women. And then number 3 was Epstein and Ghislaine. That's from the prosecutor. That's her. Like she could, that's a perfect place where if you wanted to exaggerate or not lie, but like fib or whatever, fudge it a little bit, easy place to do that. And she clearly did not, even though that would help her case. But yeah, it's, I don't know. Memories, she said herself, like, memory is not only, I wrote this down, memory is not always linear. And I do think that's true with this kind of stuff, is that like, traumatic things happen to you and you can, sometimes they're very sharp. And then sometimes for her, she obviously tried to run from this from a really long time for, totally understandable reasons, but she has been thinking about this. And, I think that the defense is trying to sort of throw sand on that, but I don't, honestly, for the jury, I don't think that what happened today is going to be that big of a problem.
Well, day 3 in the books.
Mm-hmm.
Day 4, not in the books. Until tomorrow. I'm Liz.
My name is Brace. We are, of course, joined by producer Young Chomsky.
This has been TrueAnon, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Let's go, Shanae. Jeffrey Epstein.